And so when I say Chinese, I want you to scream out the nation that's associated with this. For example, if I say Chinese, you're going to say what?
China.
All right, let's say it with authority. When I say Chinese, you say what?
China.
All right, that's just a test right there. So here we go. Chinese.
China.
Russian.
Russia.
Italian.
Italy.
German.
Germany.
Swedish.
Sweden.
Korean.
Korea.
Egyptian.
Egypt.
Nigerian.
Nigeria.
Black.
Nothing. Tell him, Pastor. Tell him, Pastor. Black, nothing.
I hope you were able to successfully identify the issue.
The lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. They want us to sell our souls to barter profit. Like God's property, it's hard to market. So we steady to aim, keep your eyes on target. Cause when you got to drive, yeah, they'd rather you park it. But I don't valet, you ain't getting these keys. I'm keeping closed hands, I'm on bended knee. I'm just a reflection, dealing with 8 sections. Art mixed with life, you can feel the convection. Your lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the lion won't sleep tonight. 'Cause we woke now, and we woke now. I said the
Nobody has time. Listen to me when I tell you this. Nobody got time to go and research each one of y'all camps. Okay? I don't. People don't. All right? You know your little Bible studies you guys have online, teachings, different theologies. I know that you guys differ in all of that. So nobody wants to hear or try to figure out who is who. Okay? I don't want to go and figure out which camp is this in Ghana, which camp is this in Tanzania, which camp is this in Kenya. Nobody cares about none of that. What I hear is shalom, shalom, shalom. What I hear is peace, 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 family, family, family. What I hear is the Most High, the Most High, the Most High. Okay? So once I hear that, this automatically, what happens is Hebrew Israelite. Okay? That is Hebrew. For me, it's Hebrew. It's what I can identify it with. And I'm a classify you as those niggas over there. Okay? That's how we're going to identify you. So if somebody comes from your camp, whether they are legit or not, and they are scamming, you're going to take the blame for it. By default. If you don't like it, that's tough. But that's what happens when you identify yourself with a religious group or ideology. Okay? It's the same thing that Black Americans do in Kenya. Unfortunately, when somebody makes a mistake, okay, nobody has the time to say, well, not all Black Americans are like that. That's not what's going to happen. Somebody's going to identify all of y'all.
This pastor arrested and accused of sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. Deputies say Paul Kane worked at the New Canaan Missionary Baptist Church for nearly 2 decades. They say he sent lewd messages to the girl. He is locked up on a $200,000 bond.
These are some serious charges, allegedly punching his own sister in the face. Now this pastor is still here in jail.
Mr. Strange, you are being charged, sir, with domestic battery by strangulation, false imprisonment, and misdemeanor battery.
In court on Tuesday, Willie Strange Jr. faced a judge for allegedly punching his sister in the face and strangling her.
This order is directed to you. You cannot be within 500 feet of her. Okay?
Strange is a pastor at the popular Mount Calvary Baptist Church in Liberty City. His name is written all over the walls and signs, and it was inside the church office where the alleged altercation happened.
Reverend Arthur Pearson has been pastor at Pilgrim Rest Baptist Church since 2008, and that's when church leaders allege he started stealing. 24-hour News 8's Leon Hendricks has been breaking new information on this case since the warrant was issued. He joins us live right now at the Kent County Courthouse in downtown Grand Rapids with more of this developing case. Leon?
Right, good afternoon. We're here because this is the next step for that pastor, where he'll go before a judge and have to hear the charges against him. Our sources told us the pastor would be turning himself in at the jail this morning, and that's exactly what happened. At about 9:45, he pulled up in an SUV. Someone else was driving. He and his wife got out, and they walked toward the jail. Up until this point, the pastor has not responded to house visits and emails from 24-hour News 8, but we came face-to-face with the pastor on the allegations for the first time today as he walked calmly toward the jail, flanked by his wife.
I mean, people consider you to be a leader in the community. Any response to people who think you stole their money? Any response at all, Pastor?
Now, also this morning, we got our hands on pages and pages of detail, just how much money is involved, where the church thinks it went. More than $230,000 is what we're talking here.
The sentencing for Keenan Horde came after he pleaded guilty to all 13 cases that involve 6 identified victims. Today in court, the victims and their families had a chance to speak in front of Horde before he was sent to prison. Horde was originally arrested in August of 2022 on a charge of sexual indecency with a child while serving as a youth pastor at First Baptist Church, Bentonville. We weren't able to reach the church today, but according to a statement made in August, the church is, quote, praying for God's perfect peace for those who have been harmed. Today, Horde pled guilty.
He was sentenced for multiple counts of both sexual offenses as well as some counts of possessing child pornography.
And was sentenced to 60 years in prison.
The pastor of Galilee Missionary Baptist Church and a deacon are facing charges of embezzlement. Strickland and Armand Barnes are both facing 1 count of embezzlement for nearly $90,000 in stolen church funds. Deputies have been investigating since last October. This after the church found a large discrepancy between their books and church's bank account.
He's now positioned in a position of power and authority. He has given within him a belt. On one side is justice, and the other is blessing. He now is given the Constitution of God as a king. I give this to you, Bishop, as a sign of covenant, as a sign of release, as my sign of love for you. Amen. My brothers will come forth, 4 sons representing the 4 corners of the earth. They'll raise him up right now. He now is raised up from a commoner to a kingship. Come on, raise it up. And I'll walk him around. Come on! Come on, praise God.
Jesus accepted his call to ministry at 30. He had been in carpentry since he was 13. He ran the family business since he was 17. At the risk of being heretical tonight, might I suggest to you that 85% of Jesus' life, he was out of order. 85% of his life, he was doing what he was not called to do. God, y'all done got quiet. For 85% of his life, he was not flowing in his God-given function. 85% of his life, he is doing what his natural father wanted. But it did not line up with his divine DNA. For 85% of his life, and he's anointed, he's called, he's chosen, and he's wrong.
Okay? And one of the reasons why that is the issue is because of your disorganization. Because you guys have so many different camps and you can't get along, and you have so much division in your camps. In Tanzania, you have so many breaking off doctrines, you guys split up in so many different camps that don't agree with each other, then it's not my fault that your doctrines can't come together so y'all can be one and united. You don't have no authority in your camps. Okay? And if all of you Israelites are not in camps, it doesn't matter, because those who are operating, selling, and scamming, we're going to put you in the camps. So if you're not in camps, it's not going to matter, because you're going to get put in those camps. So because I don't see evidence, and these are people in the Israelite community coming to me. I'm a Baptist. I don't really like, when I say this, I mean it sincerely. I have no intention on meeting none of y'all. Let me just say this. I don't care what religion you are. I don't want to meet you if you're Baptist. I don't want to meet you if you're Muslim. I don't want to meet you if you're 5%. I don't have no intention on meeting none of you. I swear to God and 30 white folks, I'm not here to meet you. I don't want to talk to you about Jehovah. I don't want to talk to you about Yahweh, what God's name is spelled like, why Jesus is not God.
Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you. If you repeat this fact, they can't laugh at you.
Want to say peace and blessings to you guys. Hope and pray all is well with you guys. We got a lot to cover, but we're going to keep it simple as well. Thought I'd just kind of let you guys hear what we're going to discuss tonight. Oshay Duke Jackson, he made basically a comment, his statement of basically saying all Hebrew Israelites are the same. But, I'm going to make sure we get the proper context. If you listen carefully to what he said, context is everything. And I know on the surface, if you listen to it on the surface, it's going to make you upset. But you have to listen to his words. You have to listen to what he said in the proper context. So let's go ahead and get into it. Not going to delay going into the lesson. But I want to make sure you guys understand context is everything. Listening with intelligence. Let me say that again. The Hebrew word is shama'ah. In the Israeli, it's pronounced shamai. It means to listen with intelligence, discernment, obedience. So I want to make sure you guys listen with intelligence. Context is everything. I'm going to reiterate that point. Context is everything. So let me start off with this thought here. First, let me adjust my clicker here, my mouse. All right, that's better. All right. Context is everything, family. But let me start with this passage here. Hebrews chapter 12, verse 1. And it reads, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses. The Hebrew word, the primitive root, adah, it means recorders. That's what it means to be a witness. It means that you are a recorder. And as Yah's chosen people, and this is lining up with Exodus chapter 12, and I believe it's either verse 5 or 6, you'll see the phrase, all the assembly of the congregation of Israel. In the ancient Hebrew, it'd be ha, qual, ha, call, which is all, quahal, assemblies, ha, adath, yashara'al. That's how you pronounce it in ancient Hebrew. Now, the proper transliteration would be all assembly or the whole assembly, because it could qual could be all or it could be whole. So all or whole, the whole assembly of witnesses. Yashara'al. So we're supposed to be an assembly of witnesses. That's the first time you see inside the text that Israel, the entire nation, all the people are being referred to as an assembly of witnesses. That's Exodus chapter 12. So witness means recorder. So when you put this passage in its proper context, with so great a cloud, Anan, and what's interesting with cloud, Anan, the first letter is the ayan, which means witness. The pictograph is an eye. Wherefore, seeing, we also are compassed about with so great a cloud, Anan, of witnesses, Adath, in other words, recorders. Let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doeth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. And you know what, family? I believe we as Yah's people, we don't understand that people are watching us. Let me say that again. Many of us don't understand that we are under the microscope. This awakening exploded. There were other awakenings if you understand history, but there is none like this awakening. And I believe that many of our brothers and sisters really don't understand the severity, even of this passage right here, of being recorders, being witnesses. Now, guess what? In order to determine whether or not if you are a good recorder, it's going to be determined in the playback. The playback is going to determine whether or not if you are a good recorder. Now, I'm going to go a little old school for some of you guys that grew up in the 70s and the 80s. I'm going to go old school. Remember back in the day, and especially if you're from the New York area, New Jersey area, the metropolitan of that area. Remember back in the day before you can go buy CDs and all of that, your favorite hip hop artists and all that, the R&B and all. You had what is called 92 KTU. You had 98.7 KISS. You also had Hot 90, WHBI. WHBI was like an underground. Remember that, back in the day, at one time, hip hop, the Super Rock and Mr. Magic, all right, and Marley Marl. They used to play, they used to come on like really late. It'd be really late. The mixes would come on like 12, 1 o'clock in the morning. WHBI could be 1 o'clock in the morning. So you're young. So I remember we would have our cassette tape and we had our 2020 radio, right? We kids. So we'll place the cassette tape inside the radio. And remember this, you had to press it down. You had to press the play and record button at the same time. And if you wasn't careful, you had to keep pressing it with some force to make sure it stays down. And then guess what? You'll fall asleep. You go to bed. And then the next day, we will wake up, right? After watching our cartoons and everything. And now we're ready to listen to the hip hop mixes. Now, if you really wanted to make everyone mad, mess up with the recording. And there was times, and I'm sure you guys been there before, on the playback, you realize you did not get the mixes. Either you didn't press the right button, you hit the pause instead of the play and record, you didn't get the mixes. And what happened? You were upset. But my point, and I'm using it as an analogy, is that we say that we are witnesses, but your actions is going to speak louder than what you can ever say. Y'all know the old school. Your actions speak louder than words. So we are surrounded. We are surrounded by a great cloud of people who they're watching everything that we do. They are watching everything that we do. So I want to preface this discussion with the thought that I just gave you. And remember that analogy. We are supposed to be the chosen people of the Most High, separated from all the foolishness. And see, when Judgment Day comes, that's the Most High is going to play back to see if you are a good recorder. See, we could say we're great witnesses, but it's not until the playback that is going to determine whether or not you are a good witness. And right now, again, we're foreseeing we also are compassed about with a great cloud of witnesses, I doth. Let us lay aside every weight and every sin which doeth so easily beset us. And this is making it clear. Not every weight is a sin. Sometimes you can have people around you that can be a weight. Do you know doctrine is one of the biggest weights? Letting go doctrine. And these doctrines that have been created, whether it's these different denominations, these are doctrines of men. The Most High did not create none of these doctrines, whether you're in this truth or outside the truth. Those are weights that can cause what? Sin. So let us set aside every weight. And if I take this Kojic, because Kojic, the main scripture that you hear all the time, that you are, as ministers, you had to quote, is Leviticus 10 and 10. Put a difference between holy and unholy, clean and unclean. So let us lay aside every weight and and the sin which doeth so easily besets us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us. So let's start off with a couple of quotes here. And excuse me, this is not correct. This is my apologies. It should say Oshay Dukes Jackson. So my apology. Didn't mean to put the wrong name here. This is not Pastor Philip Mitchell. That's a whole nother teaching I'm going to do tomorrow. But his quote, he said, "It's not my fault that your doctrines can't come together. so you all can be one and united. You don't have no authority in your camps. Now, this is key because we see that he's showing frustrations here and he's directing his comments, as you see here, to the camps. Now, I'm not here to slight or call out any camps. That's not what I'm here to do. But I will say to all those that are in the camps, this should be an opportunity, not just for those that are part of, let's just say IUIC, which is the largest, I believe IUIC and IUSPK, I believe those are the two largest, GMS, I believe those are the largest of the camps. But where I'm getting at is when we see or hear things like this, it should make you want to do an assessment on how are you being portrayed. Now, I'm not throwing shade, I'm not throwing stones at anyone. But we, in this awakening as a whole, we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. So this is his own words. I played it in the video. It's not my fault that your doctrines can't come together so you all can be one and united. You don't have no authority in your camps. He also said this, and if all of you Israelites are not in camps, it doesn't matter because those who are operating, selling, and scamming, we're going to put you in the camps. This is key right here, family. Context is everything. Discernment is everything. See, when I read this, now on the surface, when I initially heard what he had to say, it pricked me. But then I had to think about what is he saying and the proper context of what he is saying. Now, I know some of you guys are probably making comments in the comment section, which is cool. You have every right to respond to what you heard. And it may offend you when you really listen to it on the surface. Guess what? When I listened to him initially on the surface, it made me feel some kind of way. Because no, I am not in a camp. I'm not in a camp. I'm not part of any of these organizations or whatever. We have a brick and mortar ministry that we started, my wife and I, we started 16 years ago while we were still in the church. I grew up Baptist, but was raised, in other words, as a minister, groomed as a minister in the Church of God in Christ, serving under Dr. Ted Huey for 10 years. I was his armor bearer. Reputation is everything. The Hebrew word is sham. It means reputation. It means character, family. Our reputation is everything. It's more valuable than silver and gold. So this is his own words. And if all of you Israelites are not in camps, it doesn't matter because those who are operating, selling, and scamming, we're going to put you in the camps. Now, guess what? I can hear some frustration here. Because truth be told, family, it's been plenty of times I was ready to say, forget this awakening. Forget this awakening. Forget this awakening. Now I'm giving you the clean version. I'm doing what Moses did with the Most High when Moses, after mourning his sister that was dear from him, his big sister, after mourning his sister and going through all the things that he had to go through, the Israelites, they were so selfish that all they could think about is themselves. They went to Moses and said, Moses, we need water. Hey, our animals don't have water. They began to complain while he was still going through what he was going through. Had no consideration, but all they can focus on is what they wanted. And Moses and Aaron went into prayer. Most High told him what to do, told him to speak, because he knew that Moses, his temperament wasn't right. He was angry. Be angry, but sin not. He came out of that prayer with the instructions that the Most High gave him. And instead of speaking, he struck the rock. Family, pressure bursts pipes. And when he came out of prayer, oh man, he says he has some choice words. He came out of prayer with some choice words. In the end, he didn't make it to the promised land. In the end, he was only able to see. And sometimes I'll make a joke out of this saying, man, I think Moses probably did this on purpose. He did this intentionally. Like, look, you know what? These Israelites, these Negroes are off the chain. I can't do another 40 years with these Negroes. It's almost like, what's that movie, Coming to America? When the father saw Simi inside the hotel looking for his son, he's like, where's my son? What? My son works. He's going to see his son, and he sees Simi inside the hotel. And of course, he finds out what's going on. So he gave Simi the punishment. He said, Simi, your punishment, interesting, right? Simeon. He said, your punishment is to go to the royal suites, and he had to be bathed by the help. You saw the smirk he had on his face? That was his punishment. When I sometimes think about being, in the position that I am as a pastor and all the stuff that, pastors have to go through, sometimes I think that Moses may have had a smirk on his face. The Most High said, you're not going into the promised land. You and Aaron. Anyway. So this is what he said here in the video. But let's go to another quote by him, right? And I want to ask this question. Are we all the same? Are we all the same? And again, what is the proper context of what he meant here? Are we all the same? Is it right for all of us to be lumped into one group? Is Oshay correct in this assessment? I'm going to say no. But I can understand his frustration. Because part of his frustration, guess what, is the land scams. You guys know it. You guys know what's going on in this awakening. Senior citizens, our elderly, they are getting scammed. And many of you guys allow the people to do it. Many of you guys still support these people that you know is out here scamming people. So he said in his own words, he's getting complaints. He's getting people sending him letters, sending him emails about being scammed. And I've seen some of the court cases with my own eyes. I've seen it with my own eyes. I've seen the documents with my own eyes. Being sued for scamming our own elders, breaking the law, statutes, and commandments. But instead, what many within this community do, just like many within the church, because in the church you have the spirit of the slave master, right? Massa, that is in the form of pastor, that have been teaching this cognitive dissonance. In other words, contradictory behavior. Combine that with Stockholm syndrome. In other words, protecting the perpetrator and demonizing the victim. And then you divide that into herd behavior. That's what's happening. That's what he is experiencing right now. I saw Sister E inside the chat, and I know she knows some of the things that I had to deal with and what she had to deal with in this awakening. From dealing with the polygamy, you guys go look at the playlist. I dealt with a lot in this awakening. From the polygamy, from the straightway situation, all because someone was scared to debate me or have a discussion with me with polygamy, and then began to make all kinds of videos about me for about 4 months until I responded. I was quiet for 4 months. He cursed, carried on, called me homosexual, called me effeminate, all that crazy stuff. He even disrespected my own wife. I see my cousin. I'm gonna drop the link for you, Benaiah. See you in the comment section. I'm gonna drop the link for you. And what happened during those 4 months? People that said that they were, supporting me, guess what? They began to send me ugly emails. All of a sudden, I was the worst thing that they ever heard about. I was ugly, I was nasty, I was scared, I was a punk, I was all these different things. And I'm saying to myself, what in the world is going on? Until I responded. Man, when I first, after that Black Lives Matter speech that I gave, I had camps coming onto my Facebook channel page and calling me gay because I don't have a full beard. Family, I didn't start really growing a full beard, and it's not even a full beard like others, until I was in my late 30s, early 40s. I had no hair on my face for the most part. But they went onto my channel because I didn't agree with some of the things that they were teaching. They were asking me questions or tag me and stuff, and I didn't agree. I wasn't disrespectful or anything like that. But what happened? They called me gay. They called me homosexual. They called me all kinds of names. And here it is. My family, my daughters get to see this foolishness. Come on, family. And I was ready. I was like, man, these people are crazy. But I kept pressing. I could go over situation after situation. Go look at the playlist. I didn't put everything in the playlist, so I can understand his frustrations. I'm going to drop the link for my cousin Benaiah. I see him in the building. Let me see here. And I'm not sure if Sister Carol is in the building, because she's seen it from the beginning as well. Some of the craziness I had to deal with. And Sister E, I know you're preparing, but if you choose to come on, feel free. So when I listen to Oshay, I understand the context of what he's saying here. I understand his context. Yeah, we're so easy and quick to point fingers, but what are we doing in this awakening? What are we doing in this awakening? To where you have someone that is watching what we do, and now our own brothers and sisters that we supposed to be protecting, the senior citizens that are being hustled and being gamed, guess what's happening to them? They're going to Oshay. They're going to those that they feel like care. Got my cousin here as we continue to build tonight. I'm going to say peace and blessings to you, Benaiah. Peace and blessings to you, my brother.
Hey, peace and blessings, Pastor Kelly. Yeah, you right on the money with that one, cuz. Right on the money with it. And there's a lot that goes on. There's a lot that's going on over in the continent that people at large may not know about. I know Brother Oshay was talking about the land scams and stuff like that. But family, to Pastor Kelly's point, some of these elders, they're not just complaining about land scams. They're complaining about being threatened. They're complaining about having dogs sick on them. They're complaining about being, what's the word I'm looking for? Not necessarily prisoners,
being bullied, yeah.
But being forced to stay on the land and stuff like that.
It's prisoners in their homes. Yeah,
it's a lot. We've had people reach out to the FBI. We had people reach out to the oh man, I forgot the name of the organization, the government organization, but various government organizations trying to get help. And it's been difficult, family, because they're over there in the way that they've kind of, we've talked about this too, Pastor Kelly, like the way that they've gone about getting land, you know, it's kind of left them exposed, you know, and they're not able to get due process, unfortunately. But yeah, I didn't want to interrupt you, Pastor Kelly, but just wanted to say that there's a lot going on other than just the land scams. There's a lot that's going on along with it.
Oh, you good, cuz you good. And you know, I didn't get a chance to text you before I did this live, so I was hoping you jumped on because you've seen it and been part of some of the stuff that we had to deal with, some of the attacks within this community. And it's been many a times, and I'm telling the people that they may not understand. It may look like it's easy, but it's been many a times I was ready to say, forget everyone. Forget y'all. You know what I mean? I'm going to focus on the ministry that we have here. I'm going to leave social media alone, and I'm just going to deal with our local assembly here. I don't want to deal with this craziness. The disrespect that you see here in this awakening, in many cases that you don't even see inside the church.
Yep.
I mean, literally, you know, people, I mean, some of us have come into this awakening and just completely went off the chain. And truth be told, I can tell that most of the people that say that they grew up in the church that's in this awakening, they are lying. I'm calling it like it is. Or if you was in the church, you was that person that got put out. Because there's still a certain decorum that comes with that. There's still a certain temperament that comes with that. You respect, you know, protocol. Am I right, Benaiah?
Yeah, you're right. And I mean, to your point, Pastor Kelly, like some of that stuff should not have changed. You know, you should have maintained that. You know, coming over to the awakening, but unfortunately, I guess they haven't.
And you hit it right on the nail. You should have maintained, if not went even deeper. But unfortunately, many come into this awakening and they just completely lose their mind. Completely lose their mind. You know, so this is what really got me right here. Right? When I read this here, and then I had to think about it, I was like, let me go back and listen to his videos, right? This is his quote, Benaiah. He says, when it comes from so-called Israelites complaining about the scams themselves, which means if you are the real Jews, as you say, why don't y'all call out the buffoonery? See, I knew he was, when I saw this, I was like, yeah, he's speaking out of frustration.
Mm-hmm. Right.
He's speaking out of frustration. You know why, family? Because let me play something to you. And Benaiah, you're going to know this when you see it. Let me play 2 clips. And this is going to prove, it's going to give you the proper context. But right now, he's speaking out of frustration. And I've been there speaking out of frustration, saying things. And then when I, went back to it, it's like, man, did I really say that? Almost like at work. Have you guys been there before? Someone got up under your skin, especially when you're dealing with battle mails, right? You know this, Benaiah. You typing up an email and you have to catch yourself and say, you know what? Before I send it out, let me just walk away from it. Let me take a break.
Yep.
And then I'll send it when I come back to my desk. You come back to your desk and you read and you're like, what in the world? Did I type this? Family, sometimes you just have to walk away. But when you type or say things and you caught up in that moment, you could say a lot of things that may not come out the way that you intended for, really intended for it to really be conveyed. Any comments, Benaiah, before I play the clips?
No, nail on the head, cuz.
So, family, here's 2 clips that here's 2 clips I'm gonna play here. All right, let me bring Sister E in. I want to say shout outs to you, Sister E. Appreciate you jumping on. If you speaking, Sister E, unmute yourself.
Oh, I was waiting for you to play the video. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for having me.
I'll play the video and then you guys could give a reaction. Here we go.
In one of those criminal enterprises, allegedly, it is called TEOTW Ministries.
Oh, let me start it. That's the wrong. I got it out of sync. Let me play the first one. Here we go.
Now we're going to talk about the religious partition of the scam. And that is that there are organizations associated with some sect of Hebrew Israelites. Now, when I am saying this, I am not denouncing all Hebrew Israelites. As you guys know, I am a Baptist, and we have people who are bad Baptists, and we have people who are bad Catholics. So this is not a diss at Hebrew Israelites as a whole, but this tends to be a sector of criminal Hebrew Israelites who are definitely scamming people. In one of those criminal enterprises, allegedly, it is called TEOTW Ministries, also known as the End of the World Ministries. And allegedly, this ministry is ran by two brothers by the name of Keith and King. These are two gentlemen who refused to show their face. They have never shown their face. Yet and still, they are feeding customers to T3ME and their Echo Village project. Now, if you don't believe me, here are one of the guys or both of the guys saying why they cannot show their face to the people in their ministry. Now that's interesting. Can you go to TD Jakes Church and be in this ministry for so many years and never know what he looks like? Why is it that you have a ministry ran by two twins who refuse to show their face and nobody knows who they are, yet they have people who trust these individuals in the ministry? But that's not a problem for T3ME. And this was all documented by YouTube channel called We Woke Now, who busted out this particular project, who busted this out as a scam.
Now you see why I say that he was speaking out of frustration.
Yeah.
Because he did a video, the initial video calling his stuff out. And remember, but now I didn't even know it. You brought it to my attention, remember?
Right.
That he used the video, some of the video clips.
Yeah.
Any comments, guys?
Well, I was just going to say, I guess from, Oshay's point of view, and just kind of remind people, like, so he is on the continent, so he's catching it from the people that are there. I guess people are reaching out to him, complaining to him. I think he was saying that in some cases that he was, helping some folks out because they were put into a bad situation. And so he, Oshay, not being of the Israelite community, he's seeing all this stuff. And so he's backtracking. He's like, all right, so I have these people coming to me complaining. All right, so what's the common denominator? So who are you guys working with? So that's how he came across T3ME. And so he found those guys. And then of course he calls them out. And then of course he does his research and then he's looking to see what organizations funneling, members into him and stuff like that. So that's where Oshay's coming from. And that's how he's putting together his research and stuff like that. So, you can't fault him for following the breadcrumbs, for calling it out. You can't, at least in my opinion, my personal opinion, I don't think that, and I need to say this, I'm not speaking on behalf of an organization or anything like that. I'm actually speaking from my personal perspective. And just want to put that out there. But from my personal perspective, I understand where Oshay is coming from. Because I do have a heart for the elders. I do have a heart for, people not getting taken advantage of. Not to put my business out there, but my dad was, involved in one of those scams. He's up there in age. Unfortunately, he got caught up in a scam, right? Lost, some money or whatnot. And I know I've seen firsthand how that impacts somebody that is a senior citizen that doesn't have money coming in like that. Yes. You lose money like that, you're going to be in a bad position. Now, me and my brother and my family now, we might be put into a position where we have to change our posture and start helping family members out because they got put into a bad spot. I'm just saying, family, it impacts more than just the senior, more than just the elder. It can impact all families. So with that being said, when I see it, I'm motivated to move. I'm motivated to help folks out. And like I said, my personal frustration, family, is because, and this is what I've seen across Israel as a whole. Like whenever people attack our community, the hardest attacks to defend against legally are the ones that come from outside the country. Like it's easy to defend inside the country because we can take them to court, we can do all this stuff here in the States, we can take advantage of the legal system here in the States. But whenever it's over in Africa, and we don't have jurisdiction over there, right? That's when it makes it hard, and that's why I think that this scam has gone on as long as it has. It's because we're not able to. Of impact matters, at least from my perspective, impact matters from over here in the States. The only thing we can do is warn people, but grown people gonna do what grown people gonna do, like I said in the video earlier this week. And unfortunately, I think it may continue until something happens.
I agree. I think the biggest thing, and can y'all hear me?
Yeah. I had to plug my tablet up here. I was like, man, I was about to go. I didn't realize I didn't have power going on. I was like, about to lose my connection here. But no, we can hear you, Sissy.
I think the biggest thing, and let me clarify, anything that's been said about them has been because of other people's research. And Pastor Kelly and Benaiah can tell you just straight from me and the relationship I had with them. When I saw some of the situations that was going on with T3, that's when I ultimately made the decision to say, I'm pulling back. And the pulling back was solely because of that. Because guess what? I had elderly parents. And if anybody knows anything, hold on one second.
Are you good, Sissy?
She probably
okay, but when
you like, y'all shut up. No, I'm just
I had to do that real quick because I know y'all heard them in the background. But I had elderly parents, and if you know anything about elderly people, they get a little bit older and they're a little bit more open and receptive to individuals that offer them something better than what they have. And they carry money. Most older people carry money because if it's pensions, if it's life insurance, if it's just, not life insurance, but more so pensions and retirement, they live off of that. And with that being said, when I saw what was going on, and at that time my mom was alive, my dad had already passed, I thought about my parents. And if my parents were involved in that situation, and I saw that T3 and me were doing things like that to those individuals, I would have lost it because they're vulnerable. Thank you. That's the great word. They're vulnerable and they're just open for anything. And that's one thing I would say for myself, Pastor Kelly, Benaiah. It got past relationships. We broke relationships because we saw deception and we saw the elderly being mistreated. Because what did it tell you in the word? The word told you to see to the widow. That's something that we were called to do, to see to the orphan. And if I sat back, because anybody knows, and again, anything that's been disclosed in these conversations, understand people found out on their own. But with that being said, if I sat back, because anybody knows how tightly connected I was to Teo Ministries and how tightly connected that would just really Teo Ministries from a YouTube and a content standpoint. I was friends with them. I knew nothing of what was going on with T3 and me. And when I got wind of it, and Pastor Kelly can tell you, I instantly went to the source and said, hey, y'all, check them. Because they stealing old people money. Old elderly people's money. And I can't stand and sit here with y'all and agree when I found the information out. I can't stand with y'all. And the minute I got pushback from them, and T3 and me tried to come on my channel. She tried to come on my channel. Y'all know me. I ain't afraid to stand toe to toe when it comes to our people. She tried to, the wife did. She tried. I think the first time I said something to Teo and Karis and all of them when they were doing that whole thing, and I got on the live and I did my own live or follow up. She tried to get on my channel like she was trying to set the record straight. At the end of the day, you're scamming people. And if that would have been my mama, first
Come on
ticket
now.
out.
Come on
First
now.
ticket. First ticket out.
Come on now.
And I wouldn't have mind to turn. I would have turned Tanzania every which way but loosed, because that's my parents' money. That's my parents. And for y'all to sit there and because the thing is, the biggest thing I think we're all trying to say is we called it out. We called it out at the very beginning. Forget relationships. When you're doing wrong, I'm going to bring you face to face and have a conversation. When you don't want to admit what y'all are doing, then I'm going to publicly say, this is what's happening. Y'all got to realize when I did that, I lost subscribers. I lost relationships. I lost friends. And it hurt for a minute, but I had to understand this is the will of the Most High, because the blood is on your hands, Teo Ministries and T3 and me, that y'all are doing these people dirty. And I refuse to stand and talk about the word of the Most High God and watch this go on the way it's going on. And I'm gonna call them all out: T3 and me, Teo Ministry, Karis, and all of them. Y'all playing with these folk. And we called it out a long time ago. We called it out a long time ago. So I had to step out and say, I'm done. In these relationships, I'm good. I don't talk to none of them. I ain't talked to them. And how long? Yeah, I ain't talked to them in about a year since all this stuff happened. And I'm good with it, because the blood is on their hands. For every elderly person that lost something, that they went in there with a sincere heart, and y'all, and I know y'all watch it, and y'all sat there and y'all let it happen, the blood is on y'all's hands. Y'all can get on these channels and talk about y'all standing for the Most High, but seeing elderly people get abused and don't have anything to say about it, you can keep your words for the Most High, because the blood of the blood is on your hands, and y'all will be held accountable, because these people gave with a sincere heart, looking for somewhere to go for peace, and y'all gave them torment, and y'all will be held accountable. So that's all I had to say. You know, I'm a little tired and I got my thing to do on tomorrow, but yet still, I couldn't just sit here and just not say anything, because these guys, and I can understand why Oshay is mad. I'm mad right with him. I would prefer for him to understand the conversations that have transpired, but right now he don't want to understand. He calling everybody out. But with this conversation, it's letting y'all know, hey, we called it out. And not only have we called it out, when we did you remember this, Benaiah, we put out within our own group the foundation to say, this is what scamming looks like, y'all. Be careful of this. We sent the warnings out to them, to the community. We sat down and talked to people and explained to them how to deal with this. So we all put that work in. But I'm back to saying, Teo Ministries, I don't care if y'all don't talk to me ever again. The blood is on your hands. T3 and me, y'all ain't never talked to me, but the blood is on your hands. And anybody connected to this and y'all hiding, the blood is on your hands. And I'm done.
Yeah.
And real quick before you go, Sister E, and I want to make sure you guys understand this too, because let's get to the word in terms of what we're supposed to do in terms of honoring our elders, right? Love your neighbors, right? Pray for your enemies, and enemies is not what you think. You know, Ayab is actually those that are in the opposite tribe, right? Because everyone want to be Judah, but no one's focusing on the other tribes, right? And sometimes we could be disrespectful or put down the other tribes indirectly. But nevertheless, Leviticus chapter 19, I encourage you guys to read and study that chapter, and that gives you proper clarity on what it means to love one another, right? But verse 32 says, thou shalt rise up before hoary head, and honor the face of the old man, and fear thy Elohim. I am Yahweh. This is telling us to honor and defend and protect the elderly. It's telling us to protect the elderly. You'll also see inside this chapter, telling us not to go up and down as a talebearer. In other words, trolling. Family, this stuff is real. And again, as Benaiah expressed, as the E expressed, and you guys even saw some of the craziness that I had to deal with. Being called all kinds of names, agents, poke fun of, until I had to drop a response. But part of the challenge is sometimes we can give too much rope. Sometimes we can, and Benaiah, you know this from like sports, it's always like the instigator. No one holds back the instigator. It's always the one that responds that seem to be the one that everyone focuses on, gets the flag. No, we are not letting up. And that's why I say, I understand, as everyone expressed, I completely understand Oshay approach. I understand his frustration because, again, we're supposed to be witnessing to him. As he said, he don't want to hear all this, the Most High this and Yahweh or Yahweh and all these different names, saying the name incorrect. What's the proper pronunciation? He don't care about any of that. Why? Because the reputation of what he see. My mother-in-law is over in Africa. I'm not going to say where, but she's over in Africa. And Yah forbid. Yeah, that's all I want to leave it at that. Yah forbid. Yah forbid. People are not hard to find. I'll leave it at that. But now you just getting ready to say something?
Yeah, just a couple of things, because I know, Sister E, when you was bringing it out, Sister E, you was hitting the nail right on the head. And just some follow up. Again, just to reiterate, this is just our personal opinion. We are not speaking on behalf of the organization. But to that point, what should have happened, family, and this is like with any organization, like anytime that there's some sort of issue that arises, accusations of fraud or anything like that. I mean, in fact, there were court cases, court case that was out there, especially that we were following. And really, when I was following in the background, I noticed that it wasn't being defended on the perspective of it being false accusations, but it was being defended from like technical aspects of it. You know how those lawyers try to get out of it and stuff like that. It wasn't like, no, that didn't happen. It was like, well, it was filed like this, or they should have went this route and they went that route, that sort of thing. That's one. And so to that end, couldn't really say a whole lot because we're still going through that process and didn't want to mess that process up, and give folks an opportunity to defend themselves in a court of law. However, what Sister E was speaking about and what you just was speaking about, Pastor Kelly, is right now Israel, we have a reputation problem. We have a reputation problem, and it's partly due to the enemies of Israel. So we got the enemies of Israel, like 2019. I talked about this before. We had organizations like the ADL and the SPLC or whatever those guys are called, Southern Poverty Law Center, and they were just dropping misinformation about Israelites left and right, trying to frame us as some sort of like violent sect and stuff like that. So they were pushing that out there. And so we were trying to combat that, but that's gotten out into the ethos or whatever you want to call it. And that's something that we are having to battle against. And then the other thing is, of course, we got our brothers in the camps that are engaging in a certain way that's also impacting our reputation. So now we have this. I'm just saying, family. Now we have this, and this is yet another thing that can hurt our reputation. Because to Oshay's point, I'm sure that Oshay isn't the only one that's putting two and two together. Because I've seen other videos besides Oshay that are saying Hebrew Israelites, they're liars and stealers. I'm like, where are they getting that from? Well, they're getting it from the internet, family. They're getting it from social media. And so I guess, long story short, family, I just want to say that whenever stuff comes up like this, I think, I think it's important at least to voice an opinion against it, just so that it is on record, right? Just so that people know that no, we are not all in lockstep with whatever's going on. Because truth be told, family, and this is where I was going before, truth be told, when this issue came up the first time, regardless of the organization, whichever organization was in charge of it should have shut it down. It should have been shut down until an investigation went forward. You know, if it was going through the courts and all the other stuff, it should have been shut down until further notice. That is the appropriate response for it. But from what I'm hearing is that it wasn't shut down and is continuing, and that is very unfortunate. And that's why it's perpetuating, it's spreading. More and more people, from what I hear, is, they're getting impacted, and the word's going to get out, family. And so now when you go to speak to your aunts and uncles, your sisters and brothers that are in the church, not only are they seeing our brothers and sisters, in the camps, but now they're hearing this rumor about scams. It's not helping us, family. It's not helping us to sit on the sidelines and be quiet.
Yeah, and let me just jump in real quick, because it's we want to make sure that it's about having it on the record that that we are against it, but also bring about a level of awareness, and that's an addition to it, or part of it, because the biggest thing is looking at holistically the community, ensure that the community is aware of what's going on, how to protect themselves, not just with that group, but all of these groups that are doing this to people, because it's not just them. It's multiple groups out here that's doing these type of things to people, stealing their money, promising them this, and not providing whatever resources they say that's within the continent to be able to have. Because I've heard of a few accounts outside of just them. So I think when we did that, when we were all talking about it, it was just bringing about an awareness so people can be aware overarching what scamming looks like and how to be aware of scamming and identify scamming before it ends up impacting you for the long run. So
Absolutely. And the thing each and every one of us have to realize, when it's all said and done, we all as individuals are going to stand before the Most High and have to give an account. You can't say, well, someone else said this or someone else said that. You have to give an account for what you have done and what you have not done. And far as myself and the panel here, we've never been one to sit on the sideline and let something happen. I'm not wired that way, family. I'm not wired that way. But like I said, you could go into the playlist called the Wolves in Sheep's Clothing playlist, and you could get an idea of some of the things. Not everything is there, but dealt with a lot within this community. And like I said, I can understand Oshay's frustration, because I'm letting you guys know it's been plenty of times I said, man, forget this awakening. Now they heard it behind the scenes. I was ready to say, forget this. You know what I mean? Because it can really weigh on you, especially when you continue to see people kind of taking on that protect the perpetrator approach, that Stockholm syndrome approach. And that's what you saw a lot in the church. But again, I've Sister E tell you, Benaiah tell you, a lot has happened behind the scene. Passion for Reconciliation, which is the ministry that the Most High had me start 16 years ago while I was still in the church, transitioned over to this awakening. And guess what? It was quite a few people that we had helped getting them out of hard places. That got one of the saddest situations was a young girl. She was 17 years old, convinced to leave her home. Didn't know that it was a 57, 58-year-old guy. She thinking she's talking to a young guy. She get to the place, I'm not going to mention the location, and basically was Found out the guy was almost 60 years old, pulled her into some polygamous craziness and abused her. And she ended up having 2 kids. Had to set up an intervention for that to get her out of that situation, to get her back home to her parents. I got stories I can tell you about this awakening of the people that, we've helped. It's just that I don't put it out there. People that was caught up in this, and I know some of you guys gonna feel a certain way, so be it, but it is what it is. But they were caught up in this second Exodus and leaving to go over to Africa out of fear because of listening to the world is getting ready to end. How many times have people have taught that? So family, this is real. This is not a joke. And that's why he feels the way he feels, and he's entitled to it. And I'm not telling him he's wrong, because he's right about how you feel. And as Benaiah pointed out, there's a reason why when you do a search for Hebrew Israelites, or just type in Israelites, what comes up in the first, number 1, and then the top 10? You're going to see what? Of course, you'll see the ADL, you'll see others, but they're going to have all this negative stuff that people will see first. Again, we're surrounded by a cloud of witnesses. And many of us in this awakening are still taking on the Christian Catholic approach, even to evangelism. Because in the church, what do? They don't have a problem with going in front of somebody else's assemblies and stuff like that. Show me what assembly that the Messiah stood in front of. Show me what the Messiah standing in front of someone's assembly. Can someone show me that the Messiah stood in front of someone else's assembly? I do know when he was in the Mashkan, he read out of the book of Isaiah and he handed it to the minister and went and sat down. But that's the Christian Catholic way that we were taught on how to evangelize. Tear down whoever you're witnessing to and try to build them up all at one time. Insult where they are. And then try to give them a compliment. You know what I mean? Twisted. Go ahead, guys. I'm sorry.
I'm just listening. I'm gonna probably hop off in a minute, but I agree. It's just people don't realize the level of accountability and that comes with this. The level of mindset the type of mindset that you have to do this, because you have to be willing to walk away from friendships and relationships just for the will of Yah, just to say, you know what, the Father's gonna hold every single one of us accountable, in every word and every action, if we do not take care of each other. It's one of the main 2 commandments: love Him and love your neighbor. And when we step away from that for the sake of sustaining toxic relationships or not standing for people, and I hope I'm using right words, because I'm trying to make sure that it comes off correctly, but it does also send a stern understanding of what happens behind the scenes in the conversations we have. That sometimes when we do these things, we don't want to do this. None of us want to do this. If we could all just be kumbaya, Benaiah loves kumbaya. I'm messing with you, Benaiah, but I learned that from him. I learned that from him. I love Benaiah's temperament when it comes to the people, because he honestly loves the people. He want to see all of us together, but we all have, and even Pastor Kelly and myself. And with that temperament, I have to sometimes check myself to make sure, you know what, am I coming off correctly? And I even have my brothers to do a pressure check with me. I'll talk to Pastor Kelly, I'll talk to Benaiah, I'll talk to a couple of people, say, hey, did I come off right? But with that being said, that's where we have to be, one, loving and honest with one another and hold each other accountable. And this is all this is. It's just you got to be accountable for the actions. Because if we're standing here week after week doing these lives and talking to people and interacting with one another and doing all the things we're doing, and we're not holding our peers accountable as Paul did to his peers, then we're doing a disjustice, one, for the the community, and we're not following the ways of Yah. So with that being said, when we do these things, people are like, oh, they love. No, we don't like this. We want to see all of us be together and walk in unity. But this ain't unity if we don't stand firm to say we're going to protect each other and protect the innocent and the vulnerable. And I'm quiet now.
Yeah, just to land back on what you were saying, Sister E. So one of the things revelations that I've learned recently is that the elders are a treasure. Like the elders among our community, they are a treasure, especially when you look back through the vast bounds of the scripture. What you'll find is that, it was the elders that took up the leadership in the assembly. Whether you're talking all the way from Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, back in my mind back in the day, I used to think that it was a bunch of young guys. No, family, it was a bunch of old guys, bunch of old heads leading the church. Gray bearded dudes was leading church, but leading the assembly. And to that end, family, especially like, of course, my field of not expertise, but field of study is history. So when I study history, I can see throughout history how even when we came out of slavery, one of the very first things that we did as a people is that we set up an organization, or set up organizations, plural, to take care of our elders that were, fresh out of slavery, couldn't work, right? They needed somebody to take care of them. Maybe their families were, how slavery was, family, children were taken from their parents, and maybe those elderly parents were left on the plantation by themselves. They didn't have anybody of their own kin to take care of them. Well, you know what? Our forefathers, we were living by Torah. They set up these organizations to take care of the elders, and it looks as though that we've gotten away with that. Gotten away with that. Unfortunately, of course, living in the daughter of Babylon and being taught and fed from the daughter of Babylon, unfortunately, we've picked up a thing or two. But I got to tell you, family, to Pastor Kelly's point, we have to get back to to watching out for our elders. So Pastor Kelly, I'm with you. It's like I may not agree with this corporate punishment approach that Brother Oshay is using, but I can't complain because you don't really see, at least I haven't seen it, you don't really see anybody else complaining about it or calling it out. And if it just continues to manifest and grow, it's going to give a bad stain, a bad reputation, another bad reputation against our entire community. And it'll be yet another thing that the enemy will use against us. That's it, family. If you don't address this now, the enemy will use that against us. Mark my words on that.
Absolutely. And I want to answer this question real quick, because I know this is, I put a couple of things in the slides here, and we'll touch on it real quick, and get your inputs. And also too, I just want to point out, just to add to what Benaiah and Sister E said, we are required in this Torah, is in the law, that we're supposed to take care of the widows, the orphans, the seniors, the elders, right? The strangers, those, all those that don't have an inheritance. Not just the priest, because the priest didn't have an inheritance, but oftentimes people put the priest and forget about everyone else. Put the priest first. No, we're supposed to take care of those that don't have a heritage, those that are vulnerable. And that's what got the Amalekites in trouble, because that's the very area that they attacked while Israel was making their journey to the promised land. Because at the rear of the march, that's where you will have the elderly, that's where you will have the women, that's where you have the children, that's where you have, those that are vulnerable. They'll be at the rear of the march, and the Amalekites attacked them from the rear. All right. But anyway, let's highlight something real quick here, because I know sometimes, one of the things that Oshay mentioned is organization. And I want to make sure you guys understand this from the Christian perspective. Is Christianity united as Oshay and others think? Well, I'm here to tell you that it's not, right? It's not. How many denominations are within Christianity? Well, let me give you some sources. Is Christianity united? Oh, that's duplicate. Who created the Baptist Church? Right? The Baptist Church was created by John Smith, who is recognized as the founder of the First Baptist congregation around 1609 in Amsterdam, Netherlands. The Baptist movement arose in the early 1600s in England as part of the wider English separatist or Puritan movement. Those who broke away from the Church of England because they believed it had not fully separated from Catholic practices after the Reformation. He was originally an Anglican priest who became a separatist, then embraced believers' baptism, meaning baptism should only be given to those who consciously profess faith, not to infants. So why does Christianity have so many branches, right? We're going to answer this real quick. This is coming from Live Science. Why does Christianity have so many denominations? This article was published in July 29th, 2022, and it reads, right? Followers of Jesus span the globe, but the global body of more than 2 billion Christians is separated into thousands of denominations: Pentecostal, Presbyterian, Lutheran, Baptist, Apostolic, Methodist. The list goes on. You could put non-denomination there as well, right? Estimations show there are more than 200 Christian denominations in the United States and a staggering 45,000 globally, according to the Center for the Study of Global Christianity. So why does Christianity have so many branches? So you see from this article, it tells you that there's over 45,000 different denominations worldwide. In this country, more than 200. And I think that, for example, when many talk about the camps, we know that they are under One West. All of them subscribe to One West, right? But One West, yes, that's their doctrine, right? That foundational doctrine, right? But the key is that's, as far as being an Israelite, is not a religion. And that's the thing that has happened is with the narratives, as Benaiah pointed out, with ADL and some of these other organizations, they have they created this straw man and made this straw man into something they can argue against by trying to make being an Israelite a religion and not a culture, not a bloodline descendant, a bloodline family thing, a lineage thing. All right. So Wesleyan University, World Christianity, this is what it says as well. Right. The variety of Christianity can also be seen in the proliferation of denominations and sects that began in antiquity, accelerated during the Reformation in Europe, and exploded in the 20th century, particularly in North America and Africa. A recent compilation lists 33,089 Christian denominations worldwide, including the massive Roman Catholic Church with 1 billion adherents. 25 principal forms of Eastern Orthodoxy, numerous of varieties of Protestantism, and tiny storefront churches with fewer than 100 members. These include churches whose governance is democratic. But see all the different things. Doesn't sound familiar, guys. Look at what it says here. Conciliar, authoritarian churches who worship in ceremonial, ecstatic, or most silent churches whose politics are conservative, liberal, radical, quietist, churches founded and run by women, churches that seats males and females on opposite side of the churches whose clergy are celibate, monogamous, polygamous. That's a lot, right? Sounds like they are not as organized as you think. Human nature, right? We see it in the scriptures that there was issues with, even within the Levitical priests, of people wanting to do things their way. So my point is just to show that, because many will look at this awakening, hey, where's the organization? On the conservative end, 33,000 different denominations. Is that organized? But it's as high as 45,000. Any comments, guys?
That's crazy. That's crazy. That's a good point, though. That is an excellent point, because a lot of times you'll hear that point trying to be made that, oh, you guys aren't organized and stuff like that. You guys have all these different. I guess we can call it denominations or whatever the term that they're using. But to your point, yeah, I mean when I was in the Christian church family, and when I went to a small church, we would be in service, and the pastor would be talking about the small church down the street. Or when I would go to one of the mega churches, because I'm based out of Atlanta, so we got multiple mega churches down here. I go to a mega church, we'd be in a mega church, and every now and then a pastor would throw some jabs at the mega church down the street around the corner on the other side of 285. So I'm telling you, it's like it's always been that way, because from the perspective of that, whatever ministry that you were in, as far as like from the Christian perspective, they always felt as though what they were teaching, what they learned, their doctrine was always the true doctrine, and then everybody else's doctrine was false. And that was across the board: Methodist, Baptist, non-denominational, mega church, all that stuff. So yeah, I don't understand that, Pastor Kelly, when people try to bring that up. I guess they have a short-term memory when they try to make that, that claim.
Oh yeah, Baptist and Kojic always had underlying beef.
Yeah, there you go.
I grew up Baptist my whole life, and Baptists looked at Pentecostalism as being wild, and in some cases a little bit unbiblical in some of the things that they do. But then you'll have the other side where the Pentecostals look at the Baptists like they ain't got no spirit. We've seen the division amongst the Christians. So it's like it's division there. People have opinions about worship. That's something we know. And we know truly togetherness won't, I really believe truly togetherness won't come until Hamashiach comes on the scene. But yet and still, we see division even within the Christian denominations, even within what we call the Black church.
Absolutely. And growing up in the mixing pot of New York, New Jersey area, you had the Holiness Church going at the Kojic churches. You had the Apostolic going at the Kojic church. It was, man, you even had the Baptist churches going at the Methodist churches. So it's a lot of contention. That's why you will hear the saying, Sundays is the most segregated day in Christianity. Why? Because, as you can see, over 33,000, as high as 45,000 different denominations. And as you can see here, some of the same things that you see happening in this awakening, some of the similar issues. Look at what it says here again. ceremonial, whose worship is ceremonial. Some don't even worship. Some put a table in front and that's it. Some think it's a bad thing to worship. We worship at our assembly, right? Uh, Look at here, politics, churches that are into politics, whether it's conservative, literal, radical. But then also it says here, churches that are ran by women, churches that are not ran by women. You know, uh, polygamy. Yeah, there's polygamous churches out there. If you want to call it polygamous, but so they have similar issues. Of course, coming into the awakening, I know many would think that we wouldn't have these things within it. But one thing I've learned, people are going to always be people. If they had it among these problems among Israel back during Moses' time, even during the time of the Messiah, if they had these issues, guess what? Until the Most High come, as Sister E pointed out, we are still going to have these issues. Any comments, guys?
Yep, I totally agree. Yep, until the Most High comes back, we're still going to have these issues.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. And Benaiah, you mentioned this, and I have it inside this slide here. Just a key point, even for those that really don't understand, that even within the Baptist organization, there is a church that made it clear that they were Hebrew Israelites. So this is segue into that, and then we'll wrap it up here. But did the early Baptists endorse slavery? When Baptists arrived in Virginia, Georgia, and the Carolinas in the 1700s, they initially faced persecution from the Anglican establishment, but as they gained acceptance, they conformed to the racial order of slavery. White Baptist preachers began to evangelizing enslaved Africans as saving their souls, while still justifying their bondage as early servitude. Some of the earliest Baptist associations even required ministers to own slaves to be respected or financially sustained in Southern plantations. By the late 1700s, the phrase spiritual equality, social inequality became a theological excuse, meaning they claimed all souls were equal before God, but they were still upheld racial hierarchy. So in 1845, the Baptist denomination formally split over slavery. The controversy began when Southern Baptists tried to appoint slaveholders as missionaries, and the National Board refused. Right? Remember, King Leopold pushed missionaries. Northern Baptists, later called American Baptists, opposed slaveholding missionaries. Southern Baptists, now Southern Baptist Convention, broke away specifically to defend slave ownership. So is this okay to lump all churches together? And I understand Oshay's frustration, but is it okay to lump churches together? Right? So First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia, was founded in 1771, but constituted in 1777 by Reverend George Lyle and Andrew Bryan, and others. This was a so-called Black Baptist congregation. Initially, they were called the Ethiopian Church of Christ, formed before the Revolutionary War. Many of these early Black congregations, such as First African Baptist Church of Savannah, Georgia, maintained African and Israelite traditions in worship and community leadership. These enslaved Negroes were able to maintain, again, Israelite worship through encrypted messages in the form of songs, which are referred to as spirituals, and as well as writings and a lot of the images that's a reflection that you could see if you go to First African Baptist Church. But I'll stop right there. Any comments, Benaiah?
Yeah, you were talking about earlier. I guess earlier you were talking about how the Baptists were into slavery, And just to land back on that, it's like slavery was carried out not only was this carried out by churches, like that's that was across the board. But the thing that may take people aback is that when people got together on Sunday morning, sometimes those slave masters would actually sell their slaves at church on Sunday morning.
That's right.
Like that was part of their, whenever they would get together and praise the Lord and have a song and a praise, that they would sometimes trade those Negroes from time to time. So just want to let you know, just want to put that out there that, all that took place, back then. And that was part of the churches.
And the one thing that, and we'll wrap up with this here, family, to prove here, we could go through this. We touched on this for quite some time. It was for years, on top of years, defending First African Baptist Church. And family, this is one of the things you'll discover in their own words, right? They didn't allow for someone else to write their story, write their testimony. He wrote their own testimony. And within their book, you'll see this term, Father in Israel, right? You even see it on this plaque here, right? But Father in Israel, just real quick, this is coming from History of the First African Baptist Church by Reverend E.K. Love, right? Doctor of Divinity, but History of the First African Baptist Church. And look at here, he was called the Venerable Father in Israel. You could go on page 42 here. You'll see him being referred to as Venerable Father in Israel. So they knew that they were Israelites. Look at Deacon Willis Harris caused trouble and heartaches, in Israel. And look at what they refer to him as inside their handbook here. It says here, this was a righteous retribution for the troubles and heartaches he caused in Israel. So he was a troublemaker where? In Israel. They referred to themselves as Israel. They knew that they were Israelites. Why is this important? This is before the birth of Crowley, the birth of, what's the other person that they used to try to say that they are the grassroots? No, this assembly here, they knew that they were Israelites. I could go into the more, but I'm not going to get into it. I'm gonna stop right here. Any comments that you want to share on Benaiah?
No, yeah, I mean, they are forefathers at the First African Baptist Church. And like you said, like Pastor Kelly said, like that was the first church. Like that was the foundation of the black churches here in the U.S. And, not to get off topic, but, it's just funny when we hear people talk, or it's funny when I hear people talk about how, they seem to have this disdain whenever they say, Hebrew Israelites. They say it with their lips curled or something like that, right? And the irony of it is that they started as Israelites. Like the churches, the black churches here in the U.S. started as Israelite churches. And it's just unfortunate that we got away from that.
Absolutely. And what's also interesting, as to your point here, and I have it here, but as you can see, family, Andrew Bryan, Reverend Andrew Bryan was also referred to as Father in Israel. And this plaque that you see here, you'll see here, I'll zoom it in. There was another point that I was going to highlight, even about the Shabbat, that's highlighted inside this book. Let me zoom this in real quick. And family, this is the plaque. If you were standing facing the pulpit, the sanctuary, right in the sanctuary, facing the pulpit to the right of the stage, you'll see this plaque on the wall. And it literally says what you see here on your screen. This is a screen shot of it. A prince and a great man fallen this day in Israel. Making it clear that they knew that they were Israelites, family. This is the history they don't want us to know. All right, let me see here. There was something else I was going to share here about the Shabbat, right? Because it was illegal for the slaves to honor the true Shabbat, right? they could not honor the 7th-day Shabbat. They had to work on that day. And we know that in the slave codes or the black codes or Negro codes, they had a number of names. Slaves had to work on Saturday. They could not honor Shabbat. They could not honor Shabbat. But when you read this handbook, they treated Sunday as if it was as if it was the Shabbat. They literally called it Shabbat. They even had Shabbat school because they couldn't do it on Saturday because of the laws. So they treated Sunday, not because of calling it the Christian Sabbath or nothing like that, based off of the doctrine of Christianity. But when you really study this book, they really, really honor Shabbat according to Scripture, right? Because I was looking at some of the funerals. I really did a lot of research on it, but it was one thing that I wanted to highlight here that really stood out is, let me see here. They did their teachings on it. They put a lot together. Their Sunday school was referred to as Shabbat school or Sabbath school. And this is a source, PBS, confirming that. So just wanted to point that out, family, that they did not honor the Shabbat as the day of rest because of the laws back at that time. But they applied the same biblical principles on the first day of the week, which they refer to as the Shabbat. I just thought I'd point that out. Any other things you want to point out, Benaiah, before we wrap up?
Well, I mean, we just know that, especially when you talk about Savannah, Georgia, a lot of the Israelites were deep in Savannah. Actually, a lot of them moved over into Charleston, and they were some of the first ones here in the South. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of our history goes back to, our forefathers knowing exactly who they were. Another thing that I pointed out, too, is that especially when you start talking about slave revolts, a lot of the slave revolts were the result of people knowing that they were Israel and knowing that they were more than just a slave and knowing that their freedom, that they should be free. And that's why they fought back, right? Nat Turner, Denmark Vesey, that sort of thing. So it's throughout history, family. Encourage people to go back and just study up on that. And just know who you are.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And family. And I want to say this too, even to the camps that are out there, and Benaiah, you acknowledge this as well. The camps put in a lot of work. They help get this discussion to the stage, the level that it's on. So don't want to in the least sound like we're putting the camps down in terms of what they had done, the work that they put in,
Right.
as far as really being those boots on the ground. But at the same time, we all have a way to go. And I just say, not just to the camps, but to all the assemblies in this awakening, take an assessment to make sure that, our good is not being spoken of in an evil manner. Of course, outsiders going to do what they're going to do. But we have to make sure that we're making an effort, that we're not conducting ourselves in a way that's making it easier for them to not even make stuff up, but to basically put out publications about us. And so my whole thought, well, actually not my whole thought. Also, I wanted to just point out, when I pointed out with the Messiah, if we say we're going to do what Christ did, look at how he carried himself. Some things, like when Christ found out by his disciples, hey, there's somebody else out here teaching the word. Christ said, hey, said teaching about him. He said, hey, leave him alone. You know what I mean? Leave him alone. Satan can't cast out Satan. And what I mean by that is some things, just leave it in the Most High's hand, because sometimes we can miss opportunities, even if it's that one, and we could be focusing on things that can take us away from that one that we should be focusing on, like Philip with the eunuch. He was redirected from thousands that he was supposed to speak before, and the Most High led him to just go speak to that one. So with that being said, any final words, Benaiah?
Well, just laying back on what you were saying, Pastor Kelly, like I too just want to echo the sentiments of my appreciation for the camps, because I shared it before in the live. I was like, man, that was one of the tools that woke me up. One of the people that the Most High used to wake me up was the camps. I tuned into YouTube like a lot of other people, saw saw our brothers out there teaching and preaching, and it woke me up as well. So, hey, nothing but respect. It takes a lot of courage to do what you guys are doing, and very much so respect and appreciate all the hard work that you guys are doing. And I guess the point I was just trying to make before was just that, we Israelites here in the States, family, we have an uphill battle, because, our enemies, are all around, and they're just trying to use any and everything to try to, stop the awakening, to slander our character. Because what I told you, family, was that a slander campaign kicked off in 2019 in full. That is when that thing kicked off. You start talking about, ADL and the Southern Poverty Law Center right around 2019. That's when, you started hearing things about, oh, these Hebrew Israelites, oh, they're violent. Oh, you can't trust them. Oh, they're identity extremists. Now it's an extreme, thought to know your identity, to know where you're from, who you are. You know what I'm saying? Like, that, and they did all that, family. So, yeah. And so we're just having to fight against that. And it's the last thing we want to do is just to add something else to the pile. Of course, the scam stuff, definitely don't want to add that to the pile. Right. So just want to make sure we have a statement out saying, like I said, this is not from an organizational perspective. This is just my personal opinion, my personal statement, that I do stand with the elders, for the elders, stick up for the elders. My father had gotten caught up in the scam, so I have a heart for that, for against those who scam. So definitely looking out for our elders on that. So yeah, family, stay away from that. Stay away from that. I say stay away from that. Go back to Africa stuff. I have no problem with folks going, wanting to have and live abroad. That was been one of my dreams for the longest. My wife would tell you, I want to live abroad for the longest, but there's just some due diligence that, we here in the States can do. The same due diligence that you would go through to purchase a home here in the States, going with a certified, bona fide realtor here in the States. I say do the same thing there, family. Don't cut any corners. Don't, hey, I like to put my eyes on folks. I'm just going to put that out there. I like to put my eyes on folks. So if I'm going to exchange some money with you, I got to be able to see you. So I'm just saying, I would say run with that, use that as your guiding light, and, hopefully you all will be okay. But definitely stay away from that, the move back to Africa stuff.
Absolutely. And want to give some shout outs here. I almost didn't notice that there was a couple of super chats here. Brother Tony Gordon, want to say shout outs to you. Thank you for the love and support. And as my soul prosper, want to thank you for the super sticker as well. Thank you. Really appreciate you guys and family. Let's show them some love tonight. And again, with Oshay Duke Jackson, I'm just going to say appreciate you for standing up for the elderly and speaking out, being a voice for those that have gotten scammed over there, and bringing it to your platform, because you didn't have to. You could have easily just brushed it aside. But we really appreciate you for bringing it to your platform and bringing it to a much higher level of awareness. So really appreciate it. So with that being said, family, in the words of Yahweh that he gave to Moses in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13 and 14, as Israel was at what seemed to be a dead end, the Egyptians coming up from the rear to take them out, take them back to slavery, and kill many of them. But the Most High gave Moses these encouraging words to give to the Israelites. He told them to fear ye not, stand still,
and see the salvation of Yahweh. These Egyptians that you see here today, they will not have power over you ever again. The Most High will fight for you. But here's the kicker, family. We have to hold our peace. The Hebrew word there for peace is karash, which means be quiet. Calculated silence, family. Can't go back, can't stay here, keep moving forward. Shalom.
Listen, Genesis chapter 11 verse 10 explains the genealogy of Shem. Shem was a black man in Africa. If you repeat this back, Genesis 14 verse 13, Abraham steps on the scene. Being a descendant of Shem, which is a fact, means Abraham too was black. Abraham, born in the city of a black man, called Nimrod, grandson of Ham. Ham had 4 sons. One was named Canaan. Here, let me do some explaining. Abraham, Isaac was the... Jacob had 12 sons, for real, and these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel. According to Genesis chapter 10, these were the children of Israel.